Hi everyone. So this is Ashley Storer Smith is our speaker for this. They are the academic policy and representation consultant and supervisor. I know I didn't get that title quite as it is, but it's quite a long title, as Ashley knows. So this is the Lost Queer Generation. How will distance affect LGBT plus students? So I pass it over to you, Ashley.
So, hello. My name's Ashley. My job title is the Academic Voice Policy Consultant / Supervisor for Warwick Students' Union. We all love our long job titles in Students' Union. Just a kind of trigger warning heads up for this session. There will be discussions of homophobia, transphobia, queerphobia in this. And that'll kind of be throughout the session due to the nature of what the session is about. So this session, I'm going to do a bit of kind of an introduction and kind of a discussion of why I want to kind of ask this question and bring these thought processes up. And then it'll be more like a community of practice-based session where we can discuss what thoughts, feelings, ideas, projects that we want to kind of discuss and look at. And sharing that best practice of how we can help LGBT students during this whole ordeal. So this session came up from a discussion I had from a LGBT UA plus staff network at the University of Warwick. And basically a thought experiment of looking at LGBT students. So some of you may already do projects around this area where a lot of LGBT students are out with their family or friends, and this can be a difficult issue for them, especially when they move back to their home during the Christmas break. And I know that some unions have done some work around this. I know we have at Warwick have done lots of different things about it. I know in other unions where they've done kind of queer Christmas dinners and things for people who are staying on campus. But at this moment in time, due to a lot of students having to be at their home and not being able to stay on campus, there is a big difficulty of actually a lot of LGBT students who have had to, when they have been out in maybe their first and second year, and now for a much more extended period of time, have to hide their identity, their sexuality, and their gender expression for a sustained period of time, which can be seriously damaging. I know that for many different people who have experienced this, and I know I've worked with many students who have had these issues over that kind of shorter period of time of being at home during, say, the summer period or the Christmas period, that it can take a massive toll on these students, having to hide their identity, or even worse, coming out to their family and having to deal with homophobia, queerphobia, transphobia, or even in some extreme cases, being kicked out of their own home and not having anywhere to live. So we know that a lot of LGBT students have their main friend communities. Many of their queer communities are not set up before they come to university, and actually are set up at university itself. I know personally that from my experience, I did not come out until as bisexual or genderqueer until my university life, where I was able to meet people and be like, oh, that's the label, that's what I'm feeling. Where there's going to be a two very different issues, but on the same area, where LGBT students having to hide their identity who have come out at university and returning, or students that haven't had the chance to come out due to many different areas or experiences, and that they aren't going to have that community experience, or aren't going to be able to access that community experience when they do start university in October. And I think this is something where it's not talked about as much. I haven't really heard much in kind of higher education spheres or discussions that I've had with different unions about this. So that's why I wanted to create the session, so that we can kind of discuss this and think of ways where we can solve this. Because I know at Warwick we've been doing the Campus Pride project, which has been a great success. I know I did the kind of queer sexual health part of that, and there's some really interesting videos and work that the many different unions have done about Campus Pride. So I would say to access that on Facebook. But for some students, they may not be able to have the privacy to access this video or audio content. So how can we make sure those students have those communities in the kind of social aspect, but then also on the actual mental health aspect and the succession, because this is going to have a severe effect on LGBT students' retention and succession at university. We know that social aspects have a massive impact on the student experience, and especially for LGBT students. Without that, we could see a generation of LGBT students within university very much suffering and not being able to complete their degree or get what they could be able to achieve, because those social experiences and the support experiences as well of how LGBT students support other LGBT students, as well as formal services as well. So, and kind of on a final point for me, I think this is something that I've care about personally as well. I think a lot of the people in this call, and a lot of LGBT people I know only came out because of their union was able to have those was able to be able to do that. I know that personally, and I know that from experience that I've had when I worked at Newman Students Union, which is a Catholic university, and there was LGBT students who weren't able to, who felt like they weren't able to come out to their parents at home because they were sent to a religious institution. So that's why I think this is something that we need to discuss. I think this is something that we need to look at, and something that we need to try and create some solutions for, if that is just within our unions or between unions as well. So that's kind of my piece to camera about this issue. It'll be really great to kind of hear people's thoughts about this. Like, has these conversations or these thought experiments, for want of a better word, have been going through your areas in students' unions, either as officers or staff? And kind of, is there any thoughts around how we can create solutions around this, how we can make sure there is kind of that digital experience and service to make sure that we don't have a lost queer generation? So it'd be great to kind of hear. I believe I'll be able to you'll be able to unmute yourselves and start the discussions. But it'd be great to kind of hear your thoughts on kind of that question. Is this something that's been past your mind or past your desk in the unions, and what solutions and what thoughts are you thinking about creating about this area?
Hi, my name's Daz. I work at Manchester Students' Union as the Diversity and Liberation Coordinator. We thought about this like loss of community early on in lockdown, and so I was able to help the like LGBT society and the LGBT and trans officers to make a Discord community. it's not been like super active, but it's there for people to chat to each other if they want to. And I know that our advice service has also been functioning remotely, which has always been like a more accessible option for students rather than like the university counselling service. So yeah.
No, thanks for that, Des. I think that's definitely something that I know some places have been starting to think about quite early on. But I think the idea about what we're going to do with kind of new students joining, I think is going to be kind of that discussion, that kind of worry point as well. What we'll do is, rather than trying to just and say thank you again, Daz, for that, for coming forward to be the first, but to kind of make it easy for people, it'd be great if we could go around and ask people to introduce themselves, kind of who you are, what you do, where you're from, and kind of initial thoughts on the topic or stuff that you've done for LGBT students throughout. So I'll do it in the alphabetical order I have in my participants list. So we'll start with Benjamin, if that's okay.
Hi, I'm Ben. I'm the welfare executive at De Montfort Students' Union. Pronouns he, him.
Thank you, Ben. Next one, BWE5.
Hi there. Hi. Sorry, it's automatically put my name as that. My name's Bliss, pronouns she, her, and I'm the peer mentoring coordinator at the University of Leicester.
Thank you for that. Carter?
Hi, I'm Carter. I use they, them pronouns. I'm one of the vice presidents at... I think it cut out. Did any of that come through?
Start again. Only a part of it came through.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I'm Carter. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm a vice president at Staff's Unis Students' Union.
Thank you. Danielle?
Sorry. Hi, Danielle Swanson. I she, her pronouns, but I am the advice and advocacy manager at Students' Union UCL. So really interesting just to hear earlier Daz mention the use of advice services and those as support. So yeah, lovely to hear that.
Hey, just going to Danielle, you used to work at South Bank?
I did indeed, Ashley. It's
Hey, hello. Sorry. Oh, I haven't heard from you. It's great hearing previous voices. Where are we? Dia?
Hello friends, I'm Thea Rattenpowell. I'm the Equality and Diversity Executive at De Montfort Students' Union, and I use the pronouns she, her, they, them.
Thank you very much. Asaya?
Hi, sorry, couldn't find my unmute button for a second. I'm Isaiah. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the academic representation coordinator at Leicester Students' Union.
Thank you very much for that. Jess?
Hi, I'm Jess. I use she, her pronouns. I am the communications coordinator at the Union of Kingston Students. I'm quite new to my role, so I'm interested in how I can sort of bring these sorts of ideas into our communication every day.
All right, thank you. Joanna?
Hi, I'm Joanna. I use pronouns she, her, and I'm the Union Development Executive at the Montfort Students' Union.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much. Katie?
Hi, I'm Katie. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the academic representation coordinator at De Montfort Student Union.
And Kaylee?
Cool. Hiya, thought I'd put my video on. I'm Kaylee, I use pronouns she, her, and I am the assistant campaigns manager at the University of Lincoln Students' Union.
Amazing, thank you. Lucy?
Hi, I'm Lucy. I am at the advice service. I'm an advisor at the University of Manchester Student Union. So thanks, Daz, for saying, for mentioning us. And yeah, I'm just really interested in, I've been thinking about this topic as well a lot. So yeah, it's great to see kind of talking about it a little bit more.
Amazing. And Samantha?
Hello, I'm Sam. I use the pronoun she, her. I'm a student advisor at Chester Students' Union. The main reason that I'm finding this call quite interesting is through advice, as you've mentioned, we're kind of a, a port of call for the students, and we've had a few queries that this is kind of flagged for recently.
Amazing. I don't believe I missed anyone, but the list does keep jumping, even though I did try and organise it in alphabetical order. But if I missed anyone, please speak now. Oh, Josephine, sorry.
Hiya, I'm Josephine, pronoun she, her, and I work at Leeds University Union. I'm a student engagement coordinator, but I also work on projects about student success for marginalised students. So yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Sorry about that. You kept jumping on the list. I must have missed you on the list. But no, it's great. It's really good to hear that we've got kind of a range of people from a range of different, not just different unions, but different areas as well. So I think it'd be good to kind of start, especially I think on the advice side, because I say I've worked as an advisor previously, as well as an academic rep. So, but it'd be interesting to kind of get people's thoughts if this has come up before, kind of in like maybe a smaller scale during kind of the summer periods, or actually during the lockdown that we've had, or any kind of thoughts on maybe even reaching new students who will be starting with us or starting with in your institutions in September and October, and about reaching them. So any kind of thoughts, feelings, ideas, issues around kind of that area, especially around the advice part?
Tell you what, I'll hop in, Ashley. One of the things that always comes to mind with me about this, and we've been quite lucky at UCL, we've managed to continue our advice service provision online. So we are using Teams and phone calls and email and things. So we're still kind of quite active. My concern though is always, particularly with certain groups of students, whether or not, even though we can still effectively reach out to them, how effective that is, as in if they're at home, are they going to be able to have the confidential space to talk? Are they going to feel comfortable to talk even if they are perhaps in a separate room? Are they going to have the same availability and kind of want to kind of communicate? So are there going to be more barriers, and is that going to make it more difficult for them to reach out? And I think particularly as you've kind of mentioned as you started with, the more freedom that perhaps comes with being away at university and then kind of having to go back home and deal with those barriers, even if it's a continuing student with support in place or a new student who's coming to us who wants to kind of reach out and access some more support, how can we facilitate that, given we're not in control of the environment they're in at home?
And I definitely kind of want to emphasize on the point that you were saying about Danielle, about the actually if they're going to have the ability to talk. I know from the conversations I've had within my own institution, that has kind of been a thing to talk about, around not around kind of accessing advice, but around being able to get involved in these kind of discussion, these kind of content discussions, like a video call. But especially now thinking about it, yeah, of course, they actually being able to access advice services, either our own or even university services. Yeah, are they going to have the safety or the ability to actually converse with our team, with our teams? That's definitely interesting. Is there any thoughts on that, or kind of any new ideas, or even maybe solutions to that as well?
Sorry, Ashley, just jumping in, because so I previously worked at a students' union at an institution, and a lot of our students were local commuters from a particular religion. And one of the things that we found, particularly when they came onto campus and was part of the university community, is actually realizing those different perspectives and potentially questioning their own sexuality and starting to realize that they might fall under LGBTQA+. And I think, going on from what Danielle said, it's if that initial start and that welcoming into the university community and the wider community is now digital, how then, again, it goes on to that safe space of how then can they start to question their own potential sexuality and things like that in a more safe but open sort of view set. And I don't know what people's views are in terms of actually if they are commuting and they're still at their home community and they don't quite feel that they can experiment with their sexuality as much as they could do on campus, how then do we create a safe digital environment for them to do that?
Definitely. I just kind of want to read out Samantha's comment, so it's on the recording as well. Samantha said, I agree with that. We're finding we're working more flexibly for students who may need a call at a specific time to avoid that potential conflict at home, for instance. This isn't solely LGBT plus potentially. We've had this with students not wanting to discuss that they're struggling with families at home. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that kind of crosses over those streams as well. But on your point, Lewis, as well, I think that's definitely a struggle we're going to have, especially in I know from working previously in a Catholic students' union that we had some students who were questioning their sexuality and wanting to kind of have those discussions about their sexuality and their faith, and how can we be able to do that if there isn't that space or ability to be able to do that in a home context. Kind of on that, and this I'm going to kind of open it up even more as well. What have people been able to do over kind of this shorter period from kind of the March lockdown until the end of term with LGBT students, and how successful that has been with kind of the current student body? Because that'll be interesting to find out, see, and kind of maybe able to build out those ideas even more to be able to reach the new students. So does anyone kind of want to share any good practice or any good things they've been able to do with their LGBT student body, societies, officers, or around keeping that contact and development within those communities?
I don't mind jumping in on this one. It's something we've been quite lucky with lockdown, I guess, in a sense, because we've been able to train our officers from now. So normally we have our, talking about like our liberation officers, we have our changeover happen and they get face-to-face training in September when they all come back, all the good stuff. But actually, because of this, we've facilitated all of that over Teams, which has meant that from the 1st of July, when they actually started their role, they've had that face-to-face training, meaning that our LGBT plus group have already, literally last week, written a letter to government about conversion therapy and banning it, which is fantastic, and it's getting them, reach on social media to show students that they are active and doing things, which I'm super proud of them for, because, like I say, the new LGBT plus officer has literally been in post for 3 weeks, so it's amazing that they're already getting moving. Something else that we're also looking to do in the future, whether that be physical or not at the moment, is to have our liberation officers do kind of drop-ins and advice, which is something we haven't done before, but we're looking to do when we can kind of get back, and whether that will be virtual as well, we're not sure yet. But actually to have those officers posted in the advice centre at a certain time each week or month or whatever it is, so that if there is a student that maybe needs support through advice but doesn't feel comfortable going themselves, or it might be about a particular topic that they don't want to discuss on their own, there is that kind of extra level of support on a peer-to-peer basis. So that's something that we're at Lincoln looking to bring in next year, and that might be to start with, like doing Facebook Lives just to kind of get the officers' faces out there and things like that. But we're certainly looking at getting the officers out more for that peer-to-peer support and help for students.
That sounds really great. Sounds really good. Does anyone else want to kind of share some great work they've been doing?
Yeah. So we I look after the trans campaign as part of my role, and the students use this opportunity to do some really unique direct action. So we've been campaigning for gender neutral toilets across campus for about 4+ years now, since I was a fresher. And we've just, we've done all the official routes of like going to EDI and talking to them and stuff, and it's just not working. So we thought that using lockdown as sort of the setting would be a really interesting way to do some direct action online about gender neutral toilets, and about how now that everyone is at home, the toilet in their home is gender neutral. So we can use that as a point to be like, look, it's not that hard. So we've been doing I think we've done it twice now, like Twitter blasts using specific hashtags and like tagging the EDI department. And it's been going really well, and I'm really proud of them. And hopefully it will actually help us to get a bit further with that. I also think, as far as I'm aware, the LGBT Society managed to have their entire committee election online and filled all the roles, so that's great as well.
Amazing, that's grand. Does anyone else want to share some best practice?
Yeah. So I was just thinking when someone said peer-to-peer support. So at the University of Leicester Students' Union, our peer mentoring scheme, so that's university-wide, we've now, for this September, it's now going to match up different LGBT plus identities with the mentors and the mentees, and it's up to them to disclose it to us. So we're not forcing everyone to tell us their sexuality or gender. It's up to them if they want to say, this is my identity and can I be matched with a mentor that has the same, and hopefully that will, bridge the gap in this big, the lack of community that they would have had physically on campus. Maybe this will help a little bit. At least they'll feel that they've got someone that they can talk to about that. Fingers crossed. Obviously, this is the first year we're doing it, but hopefully it's at least an idea, to kind of, particularly with so much being remote right now.
Amazing, thanks. Yeah, I think a lot of the peer stuff, peer-to-peer stuff going online is going to be really helpful. I think so. Just from an unrelated thing, but came up in my thought process around maybe issues that we may see, is that I know from personal experience and from experiences of friends as well, that actually being alone in their being alone during kind of these times and going through a lot of things of questioning either gender or sexuality or both, that we can be tempted onto the negative areas of the internet, and to perpetuate kind of our internalized homophobia and transphobia onto ourselves. And I think that trying to create as many kind of positive spaces as possible is going to really help with that, because if they're getting negative views of LGBT people from family who they're living with, and then that being perpetuated by some of their online interactions, that it can be an incredibly lonely and isolating experience. I think, especially when we talk around the advice side, and especially mental health, like how we can make sure that we can support the mental well-being of these students, I think it's going to be incredibly important as well. Does anyone else want to share any kind of best practice, or kind of any thoughts or feelings or kind of issues or worries? That'd be really great to hear. Okay, I'm going to take that silence as there's not much to kind of add at this point. I think looking at kind of other issues, especially is, and I don't know if any of your unions have done work on this. I know we haven't been able to do much work on this at Warwick because Warwick doesn't collect. This is the first year Warwick has collected LGBT identifier data on their students. But if you've done any work around LGBT attainment gap or even any kind of data analysis on it, because I feel like that from what we were talking about earlier, that and kind of from my initial speech, that this kind of period could have a massive effect on the LGBT attainment gap. So it'll be interesting if any of if as a union you monitor it, or your institution has talked to you about it, or looking at monitoring that as well. But it'd be good to hear if there's a kind of anything around kind of attainment gap stuff, LGBT attainment gap stuff that is on anyone's radar. Thanks for that, Daz. I don't think it's something that's actually being looked into much. I know there are some institutions that have done some work on it. I know we were looking at some of it at Brighton, but yeah, it's not done as well. Asai, you were about to unmute yourself, so.
Yeah, so at Leicester University, we do have some of that data from the university centrally in terms of kind of their very vague collection of LGBT identities they actually ask people about, and the data. And I've looked at it personally, but one of the issues we've had with it is that it's so incredibly vague. They only collect in 3 categories. One of them is gay men, and then you've got gay women, and then bisexual sometimes, and other, and that's it. So it gets a little bit washed in terms of how we can use that data, but also we have nothing on trans people at university. And I think that's just got something to do with what we collect, is that we never ask in terms of the data that we put into EDI, how many trans students we have and what they're achieving. So I'm not sure I don't know if there's other universities and SUs in a similar place where we're trying, but actually getting the data from the university has been quite difficult.
Yeah, I think that's, from what I've heard of other places, that's a very similar experience. I know Samantha just said it isn't a data stream that is shared by a university, so it isn't something we naturally monitor. We're on the cusp of a new website, however, so I'm quite interested to see if it's something that we could be looked into. Kaylee said, unfortunately not yet, but that's a really interesting thought to consider. I know that this is something, and I don't know the possibility of being able to do it within your institutions, but I know at Brighton we used to do something where we used to send what was it? We used to send a set of student numbers to the university, and then they would create graphs for us based on attainment progression. We mainly used it for looking at people being involved with the issue and people not being involved with the issue around attainment and progression. But I don't know if that could be something where, if we have the data on LGBT students and be able to kind of collect both ways and try and work it out there. So Josephine just said, it's definitely in a similar place. At Leeds, I've asked about protected characteristics and students from minority participation backgrounds, and only being able to have BAME disaggregated in specific ethnic backgrounds. Home to do the same for LGBT student groups. Yeah, I think that's the same for a lot of institutions as well. I know Warwick, and when we've looked at their data, they will bundle BAME together, and that's been incredibly difficult. Something that we've been working on at Warwick Students' Union, which is something that I think's been very interesting. It's actually been done by Sam, who's our campaigns coordinator. I've just put the link into the chat now about trans-inclusive teaching and learning. Sam's been actually doing trans-inclusive workshops to lecturers across the university. They've had really great take-up as well from a wide range of departments, not just arts departments, but we've actually had a great take-up from science departments as well, and social sciences, which has been really good. So I think there's a lot of things that can be done kind of generally around kind of inclusivity that can help these our students, that we can do to make sure that they feel welcome at Warwick, or sorry, at your institution generally, so that they're able to then feel comfortable to be able to access these services and the peer groups and the peer mentoring and the activities that our students put on and that we run. So there is, as saying, in that link, there are the guidelines that Warwick has set up around trans and gender diverse students and learning in the academic context, as well as queer pedagogy. So definitely have a look at that, and maybe some stuff to pass to your LGBT officers or societies, depending on your union, about that kind of work, if that is something that is of interest. I know this session's is only 45 minutes, so we're now coming to the end-esque. We've got about 6 minutes left, so what I'll do is it'll be good if anyone wants to kind of say any kind of final thoughts, feelings, or things that they're looking at doing, or any ideas or thoughts of the stuff that I've just said, or anyone that's said anything that has been said by anyone during the session, and that'd be really good to do. So I'll just mute myself so you can chat. Okay, I'm going to take that silence as I think we're all talked out at the moment. I know this topic is rather intense, but thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for contributing. There's been some great stuff that's been discussed, and I think hopefully we'll be able to bring this back to our own institutions and discuss further, and hopefully be able to start some of those conversations that may have not been started on the university end. Just kind of a bit about me as well. As in, if you want to get in contact with me about anything around this or some of the stuff that we've done around Campus Pride, I'm more than happy to. You can find my email everywhere, or message me on LinkedIn or anything. So I'm more than happy to be contacted about anything that we do at Warwick. Same with the link that I put in the chat about the trans-inclusive teaching. I'm more than happy to kind of discuss that through. But thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for taking time out to sit in front of your computer for this session. I know it's a intense kind of thing, but I think it's a conversation that we definitely need to be having. So thanks very much for having that conversation with us.